Hello, everyone. This is Live Life Well TV host Robert Landau, and this is another episode of the show here on Live Life Well TV that we call Top 10. And this episode of Top 10 is one that happens to be very close to my heart, and it's in the title. I call this episode the Top 10 Coolest Places in the World, according to me. Now, why would I call it that? Because some of you might know that at one time, I happened to have been an international cruise director for no less than 10 years, 300 ports of call on close to 400 cruises. It was just an amazing career. And I got to visit some really off the beaten path ports of call. And so I'm going to choose 10 of those very briefly to share with you today. Some of them you've heard of, some you have not. And I certainly hope you will find it as interesting to hear about as it was for me to visit. So get your seatbelt secure, get your life vest on, and we'll start in just a minute. All right, the 10th coolest place that I have visited is called Palmerston Island, Palmerston, Palmerston Island. It is located nearly 2,000 miles northeast of New Zealand. Palmerston is 500 miles away from the Cook Islands' capital and main population center, Rarotonga. It is a flat coral atoll, has no airport. I'm not even sure there would be room for a runway, and it does not have any commercial service by sea. It was on the itinerary of a cruise series that I did back in it was either the late 1980s or early 1990s. I think it was early 1990s. And I had never heard of Palmerston, but as cruise director, you do port talks. So as I'm researching my port lecture, I'm finding this place so incredibly interesting. It's a small flat coral atoll, literally at water level, and very, very unique. Ships can't dock there. There's no pier. The water isn't deep enough for that to occur. And so you drop anchor and use the ship's tenders, or in our case, I think it might have also been Zodiac rubber rafts, because it's the kind of place where you have to wait for the tide, like every 4 or 5 waves, and then it's calm, and then you can go in to Palmerston and wash up on one of the beaches there. I think that's how we did it. It was a while back, so I'm not sure, but it's pretty primitive there. In the early 1860s, an English itinerant by the name of William Masters arrived on the island. He was part of a wave of European missionaries and traders who flocked to Polynesia in the 19th century. Although the Cooks became a British protectorate, the Cook Islands, in 1888, and were eventually annexed by the colony of New Zealand in 1900, the archipelago was politically sovereign when Masters was sent there by an employer to plant palm trees for copra, a form of dried coconut from which oil can be extracted. Masters had left England for the American gold fields in his early 20s and spent the subsequent years plying the South Pacific, working jobs thought to range from carpenter all the way to that of an interpreter. He came to Palmerston by way of another island in the Cook Island chain. There, he married a chief's daughter, whom he called Sarah. He brought her to Palmerston, as well as her cousin, who is recognized as his second spouse, though Masters had previously fathered children with a third woman from another of the Cook Islands. Between those three and his third official Polynesian wife, Masters sired, get this, 23 children. He also sired several before leaving England. Today, to that end, almost everyone in Palmerston can trace their roots back to him, to Masters, with some influx from other islands. While polygamy was not unusual in Polynesian cultures in those days, Palmerston's history is rather unique. It was really wonderful to meet all these descendants of Masters. And the island's population is minimal. I think there were like 50 to 80 people who lived there at that time, because all of the younger ones would take off and leave to go to school, and certainly college in New Zealand, and continue their lives there. Since, I mean, there was nothing on Palmerston, no main street. The homes and the church, I seem to remember, that the population of Palmerston lives in are some of the things off the sailing ship that Masters arrived on the island with. So in the church, you see the portholes from his 3 or 4 masted sailing ship. They're used as windows now in the church. It was amazing. And the people were so wonderful, and they made a lovely meal for us and took us on an all but brief tour. That's a very special place. But here's number 9. It's something called Borobudur, Borobodur. It's in Indonesia. I have been there a number of times. The Borobudur temple compounds happen to be one of the greatest Buddhist monuments in the world. Borobudur was built in the 8th and 9th centuries AD. It is in the southern part of central Java, Indonesia, at the center of the island of Java in Indonesia. Indonesia is a series of islands, and Java happens to be one of them. The Borobudur temple was used as a Buddhist temple from its construction until sometime between the 10th and 15th century, when it was abandoned. Since its rediscovery in the 19th century and restoration in the 20th century, it has been brought back into a Buddhist archaeological site. It's amazing. And as you'll see from the photos, or you have seen from the photos of it, it looks like the Buddhist version of a pyramid. And it's built in levels. And each level, you'll see all these amazing stone carvings by hand. And many of these carvings tell the story of Buddha. And on the top level of Borobudur, you have a whole bunch of Buddhas that many of them are still, they're encased and in like a brick tile thing, to where if you put your hand through one of those openings around a Buddha and touch it, you will be blessed with good luck. It was such an amazing visit to such an amazing place, and that is and will always be Borobudur. Here's number 8. It is the island of Tonga Tapu, actually the capital of Tonga, in the Tonga island chain. Tonga is located in the South Pacific Ocean, south of Western Samoa. In total, this island archipelago is made up of no less than 176 islands, with only 36 being inhabited. With a ship that our crews directed back then, we visited 2 or 3 islands. One of them was just this beach. It was incredible. The islands are divided into 3 groups: Vava'u, Pai, and Tonga Tapu. The U.S. Peace Corps happens to be active in Tonga, and in 2017 celebrated its 50th anniversary in the country of Tonga in the South Pacific. Tonga was a protected state of the United Kingdom until 1970. It is the South Pacific's last true Polynesian kingdom, a constitutional hereditary monarchy. I met the King of Tonga on a visit there. What an amazing experience that was. We had him on board for lunch, and he was such an amazing guy. Big Polynesian, Hawaiian, really looking fellow. And he wore traditional wear, which looked like a bamboo mat that he had wrapped around him. And he came with his entourage. It was amazing. And then we had a tour of the capital. And we didn't go into his palace. I don't know why, but what an amazing day it was. How many people can say that they had lunch with the King of Tonga? It is said that the current king's worth, that was not the king that I met, but the current king's net worth or net income is estimated to be between $1 million to $5 million. The current king has made such an amount of wealth from his primary career as king. But the island was fairly primitive. Unlike Palmerston, it did have electricity. I don't know if it was done by generator. There were generators for those on Palmerston too, but I think there was true electricity in Tonga. People had cars in Tonga. Palmerston was way too small for that to occur. I don't even think they had bicycles, because I don't remember there being paved roads back then, but certainly in Tonga there were. Great place to visit. Here's number 7, the ancient city of Ephesus. That's a name you probably recognize. The History Channel says that Ephesus was an ancient port city that now is in ruins. It's kind of like the Acropolis, or a lot of sites like that in Athens, but Ephesus happens to be the largest archaeological site that, as far as I know, to this day, is still in the process of being excavated. It's still being dug up, but what there is to visit is absolutely astounding. I visited it with a number of ships. It's in Turkey, and the port that your ship calls at for the ancient city of Ephesus is Kushadasi. And it's about, I don't know, a 20 to 40-minute bus ride from the pier. And it is an amazing visit. The city was once Ephesus, considered the most important Greek city and the most important trading center in the Mediterranean region. Now, Greek city, because back in antiquity, it was a part of Greece, depending on what part of history you're looking at. Throughout history, Ephesus has survived multiple attacks and changed hands many times between conquerors. It was also a hotbed of early Christian evangelism, and to this day remains an important archaeological site and Christian pilgrimage destination. Ephesus, in its day, played a vital role in the spread of Christianity. Starting in the 1st century AD, notable Christians such as St. Paul and St. John visited and rebuked the cults of Artemis in Ephesus in the day, winning many Christian converts in the process. Mary, the mother of Jesus, is thought to have spent her last years in Ephesus with St. John. Her house and John's tomb can be visited there. Ephesus is mentioned, as you might know, multiple times in the New Testament, and the biblical book of Ephesians, written around 60 AD, is thought to be a letter from Paul to Ephesian Christians, although some scholars actually question that to be the source. Not every Ephesian was open to Paul's Christian message. Chapter 19 in the book of Acts tells of a riot started by a man named Demetrius. Demetrius made silver coins featuring the likeness of Artemis, a goddess. Tired of Paul's attacks on the goddess he worshipped and so many others, and worried that the spread of Christianity would ruin his trade, Demetrius plotted a riot and enticed a large crowd to turn against Paul and his disciples. Ephesian officials, however, protected Paul and his followers, and eventually Christianity became the city's official religion. But it was Greek, it was Roman, it has had an amazing history, a truly amazing place. On the main street in Ephesus, it used to be in antiquity, folks, heated from the bottom, from below the stone tiles of the street. It is said to have been lit by street lights. It is the street that Paul walked. It is the street that John walked. It is also said that Jesus visited there, as did Cleopatra and Mark Antony. Number 6 is a place that you might have visited if you've been to Alaska, and certainly if you've cruised Alaska like I did. My 6th cool place is Juneau, Alaska. Juneau happens to be the capital city of the state of Alaska. It is located in the Gastineau Channel and the Alaskan Panhandle. It is a unified municipality and the second largest city in the United States of America by area. Juneau was named the capital of Alaska back in 1906 when the government of what was then the District of Alaska was moved from Sitka, Alaska, as dictated by the US Congress in 1900. The municipality unified on July 1st, 1970, when the city of Juneau merged with the city of Douglas and the surrounding greater Juneau borough to form the current municipality, which is larger by area, get this, than both Rhode Island and Delaware combined. It is an incredible place. I visited Juneau every week, once a week, for 5 months when I cruise directed Alaska and never got tired of it. Juneau happens to be unique among the 49 US capitals on mainland North America in that there are no roads, I remember this well, connecting the city to the rest of the state or to the rest of North America. Honolulu, Hawaii is the only other state capital not connected by road to the rest of North America for obvious reasons. The absence of a road network is due to the extremely rugged terrain that surrounds Juneau. This in turn makes Juneau a de facto island city in terms of transportation, at least, since all goods coming in and out must go by plane or boat, in spite of the cities being on the Alaskan mainland. Downtown Juneau, which is an incredible place to visit, sits at sea level. Atop the mountains that surround Juneau is the Juneau ice field, a large ice mass from which about, get this, 30 glaciers flow. 2 of these, one very famous, the Mendenhall Glacier, and the other Lemon Creek Glacier, are visible from the local road system. The Mendenhall Glacier has been gradually retreating. Its front face is declining in width and height. I love Juneau. Number 5, a place back in Indonesia called Toraja Land. This strangely shaped island of Sulawesi looks like someone squashed a giant spider on the map of Indonesia. It's the island of Sulawesi where you can find Toraja Land. Squashed between Borneo to the west and the small islands of Moluku to the east, adrift between the continents of Asia and Australia. It is a place where land and water, species and cultures blend and converge. Here, in the southern highlands of Sulawesi, is a place known as Toraja Land. Visiting these misty mountain valleys is a little like walking into an anthropology lesson, which is so true in that there are so many unusual customs and rituals. The people of Toraja Land, so we would arrive on the island of Sulawesi by tender, and then there would be vans that would take us up to Toraja Land. It's in a mountain valley, and you climb twisting mountain roads with these vans to get there. And once you're there, it's like this hidden wonderland. It is said, and I think this is true, that Torajan ancestors came from the north, kind of like mainland Asia, and they arrived in Sulawesi and decided to settle way up higher altitude in Toraja Land. And the typical Torajan home looks like an upside down sailboat, sailing ship. And this is in recognition of their ancestors that found this incredible land. The funerals of those that pass in Toraja Land are amazing. They believe in celebrating one's passing, kind of like they do in New Orleans. Huge week-long events include dancing, poetry, music, and animal sacrifices to prepare the deceased for the afterlife, which happens to include a journey to the stars. There's this huge cliff, and out of the rock of the cliff, you see these balconies, and it looks like people are watching you from these balconies. But what these really are, when you get a little closer to these cliffs, are effigies of people that have passed, and they are buried in coffins in these cliffs. And so it's amazing. It's scary because it looks like these people are watching you after they have passed, watching them. An incredible place. Toraja Land is well worth the visit. Number 4 is Bermuda, which happens to be a British overseas territory. Many people who are not familiar with Bermuda think Bermuda is part of the Caribbean, and that couldn't be further from the case. It actually sits all alone in the Atlantic Ocean, kind of on par with the Carolinas. I used to cruise direct cruises from New York to Bermuda, 7-day cruises for years during the summers. And it is a true paradise of a place. Like the Caribbean, but then some. Pure pink sand is one of the many things that Bermuda happens to be famous for. You could spend all day at a secluded Bermudan beach and never be bothered by anyone. There are tons of mopeds on the island. You wear Bermuda shorts there. The food is excellent. The people are wonderful. The architecture is grand. It is a stunningly beautiful place with amazing people. Number 3 is Delos, Greece. It's an island. It's a Greek isle. Over the centuries, Delos was truly a cosmopolitan center with a very diverse population that included people from all over the Mediterranean. But in 88 BCE, the Romans razed the island during a war, a true devastation that Delos has never recovered from. Away from the limelight for several centuries, its population dwindled, and by the 3rd century CE, only a small Christian community called Delos home. Subsequently, Delos was plundered several times in the 8th and 9th centuries, and during Ottoman occupation, the nearly deserted island became and remained a pirate stronghold. The ancient ruins, which are still amazing to see to this very day, some of which were also pilfered for marble and stone, which were used by the nearby islanders for their own construction needs. But Delos, nobody lives on it now, and I don't think it's too far from Mykonos, from what I remember. I cruised the Greek islands as cruise director for many years, and Delos was always a fun visit. Incredible, incredible place. Number 2, the Panama Canal. Did that as a cruise director as well. Maybe you cruised the Panama Canal. The Encyclopedia Britannica says that the Panama Canal, lock-type canal, it is owned and administered by the Republic of Panama these days, connects, of course, the Atlantic and the Pacific Oceans through the narrow isthmus of Panama. An incredible number of hours to go through it. The length of the Panama Canal from shoreline to shoreline is about 45 miles, and from deep water in the Atlantic to deep water in the Pacific, about 50 miles per se. The canal, which was completed in August of 1914, is one of the 2 most strategic artificial waterways in the world. What's the other one? Do you know what other canal? The Suez Canal. Ships sailing between the east and west coasts of the United States, which otherwise would be obliged to round Cape Horn in South America, shortened their voyage by about 8,000 nautical miles by using the Panama Canal instead. Savings of up to 3,500 nautical miles are also made on voyages between one coast of North America and ports on the other side of South America. Ships sailing between Europe and East Asia or Australia can save as much as 2,000 nautical miles by using the canal. From its opening in 1914 until 1979, the Panama Canal, as you might know, was controlled solely by the United States, which built it. In 1979, however, control of the canal passed to the Panama Canal Commission, a joint agency of the United States and the Republic of Panama, and complete control passed to Panama on noon on December 31st, 1999. I remember that, actually. Administration of the canal is the responsibility of the Panama Canal Authority, which answers solely to the government of Panama. It's so cool because when you cruise the Panama Canal, you have an official on board who guides you on the open decks of your ship and gives you all kinds of sightseeing tips and history of the canal as you navigate the various water locks. It's amazing, a true wonder of the world, which brings us to number 1. Yes, we made it. Number 1 happens to be the one and only Amazon River. I did the Amazon from Rio, which is not where the Amazon starts, but we cruised out of Rio up the Amazon to Manaus at the end of the Amazon and back, with stops along the way on the Amazon. I sat with many of the tribes, the primitive tribes that live on the Amazon. It was amazing. And the Amazon is much wider than you would think. LiveScience.com says that the Amazon River is a massive, intricate water system weaving through one of the most vital and complex ecosystems in the world, the Amazon rainforest in South America. It is by far the mightiest river on Earth in terms of volume and width, reaching a span of nearly 30 miles in some parts during the rainy season. The river and its basin are home to many unique species of animals, trees, and plants. I remember at night People would be walking the decks of our cruise ship and really would get freaked out because we had all the deck lights on so people could see where they were going, but it would attract the hugest flying spiders and all kinds of other insects, which then would stay on the ship, on the deck and on the sides of the ship by the portholes. And it would really freak passengers out because these were massive insects. The Amazon River's 4,000-mile journey begins high in the Andes, actually. These mountains act as a wall blocking the warm, moist air moving in from the east, resulting in heavy, persistent rainfall that consistently feeds the Amazon's headwaters. The river then makes its way east through thousands of miles of rainforests and lowlands until it empties into the Atlantic Ocean on the northeastern coast of Brazil. The Amazon River, if you didn't know already, happens to be the second longest river in the world, slightly shorter than what longest river in the world. And if you don't know, it happens to be the Nile River, although some experts contend that the two rivers are so close in length that it is difficult to say which river is actually longer. With more than 1,100 tributaries, 17 of which are over 930 miles long, the Amazon River has the largest drainage system in the world. It is estimated that approximately 1/5 of all the water that runs on the Earth's surface is carried by the Amazon River, according to the Encyclopedia Britannica. In fact, it has greater volume and total discharge than the next 6 largest rivers combined. Whew, I feel like we were on a world cruise. Don't you? But I hope you enjoyed these top 10 coolest places that I feel are certainly worth mentioning on this incredible planet that we are so blessed to live on. I want to thank you on going on this journey with me. I truly appreciate it. Hope you had a good cruise. Anyway, this has been Robert Landau, Live Life Well TV host. Thank you so much for tuning in.